So we were discussing in the Maimer the two levels of birurim. One is bederech milchama in a war, and one is bederech menucha. By Shloime, he discussed that it was bederech menucha, which means the Shloime Melech was sitting in his place in Yerushalayim, and all the people came to him. He didn't have to go and travel to the places to change them around. They came to him. That's B'derech Menucha. He doesn't have to, the Mevarer doesn't have to go down to the place of the one who is being Mizbarer. As opposed to the Orin, when it traveled in the desert, Bechlal the Mishkan and the Orin, and when it traveled in the desert, it was in a way that it had to come down to the opposite force and be mevarer them. And that's why there's the two times the pasuk of Kuma he quoted from before. By David HaMelech, by Shloima, it says Kuma Hashem limnucha secha. It was menucha. It was limnucha secha. By the Oren, it says Kuma Hashem v'yefutzu ivecha v'yanusu misanecha, that there is misanecha, because over there it's b'derech milchama. And the Rebbe added, even though that in some Maimorim we say that even the Oren was in a way of menucha, that was because once the Oren was there, it poiled in them automatically. So it was in a way, it was also b'derech menucha, but still, it had to go down to the desert to them. The Mavarer had to go down to the Mizbarer. And that's why that is called b'derech milchama. The Rebbe is going to add now that it also makes a difference. Besides the way you are doing the berurim, whether it's b'derech menucha or it's b'derech milchama, there's also a difference. What remains when you do b'derech milchama, something remains intact later on also. The oivecha, misanecha, are not totally nullified. They're not in this battle b'metzias. They still remain a metzias, and they're still oivecha, still misanecha, as opposed to by Shlomo HaMelech, where it's lemnucha secha, there is this battle total. Test, look inside. Yeshleim Habiyur, so we can say the explanation. Yeshleim, we can say Shachiluk ben Kuma Havaya Shomer Moshe, lekuma Havaya Shomer David. That the difference between Kuma Hashem that was said by Moshe v'yafutzu ivecha, and the Kuma Hashem which Omer David, David says, which was lemenucha secha, hu b'shnei inyonim, is in two aspects. Ba'ofen habirur, first it's in the way it's mevarer, which we were discussing till now. Shabirur al yidei ha'orin de mishkan ha'ya b'derech milchama. The way the orin was mevarer and the mishkan, the orin mishkan, was in a way of war. That's why the pasuk says, there is oivecha misanecha. They need to be scattered. That's a war, a way of war. The oivim and the misanim, the enemies and the haters, will be scattered. But there is haters and there is nusunacha. That's the bitter through the order. Sheyeshno menagdim. There are opponents. Oivecha misanecha. Shetzarich lilcham behem. You need to wage war with them. So that is the one that is in the Mishkan. And then the sorting out, which is in the days of Shloimo, bifrat al yidei hagilu de beis hamikdosh. But generally Shloimo, and especially as it was in the beis hamikdosh. So the birur hoy b'derech menucha. It was in the way of menucha. That's why David said, Kum Hashem lemnucha secha, kinal baruch Hashem baruch. But the Rebbe adds now that there's also v'gam b'habirur atzmei. What is accomplished in what you sorted out, there's also a difference. The fact that by Kuma Hashem that Moshe says, we say, let your enemies and the haters be scattered and run away. when you say scatter and run away, that means that they're still there. They ran away, yes, but it doesn't mean that they were nullified. They weren't this battle. They're still there. They scattered. They ran away. And the reason is, even after they were sorted out, after the through the journey of the Orden in the Midbar, there is still left opponents. But they were in a way that they were scattered and they ran away. Why is that? That when the birur is in a way of derech milchama, they remain even afterwards. It's not fully, it's not complete. They're not in this battle in Gans. Why is that? Because if the mevader has to dress up in the mizbarer, come to the midbar or the orin, dress up in the mevader, that means that the mevader is teifes smoking by him, because he's going to him. So if he's teifes smoking by him, so then he cannot totally be mevatel him, because by him himself is teifes smoking. He goes down there, and therefore the bittel is not complete. As opposed to when it's a bittel, which is milmayla lamato. In other words, you're not nisbarer, you're not dressing up into the nisbarer, and you're from a distance. Shlomo Melech is there, and then it's a bittul betachlis. And the Rebbe is going to say, even in that, there is two levels. Let's wait. We'll see in a minute. But the idea is the birur shebederech milmayla lamato. In a way, milmayla lamato means that the mevader dresses up in the nizbarer and he works with him to change around. Shah elyon. No, but milmayla mata means no, when he doesn't dress up, it's just milmayla. Shah elyon hamevader, in which, like by Shlomo Melech, in which the elyon, the one that does the mevader, einei mislabish b'hatachten. He doesn't dress up in the tachten. He stays in his place. He doesn't come down to the tachten. V'habirur b'hatachten. How does the sorting out of the tachten, hu al yidei gilui oir de ha'elyon? It's through the revelation of light of the elyon. That's how you are mevader the tachten. So, zeh shehatachten einoi menagid. So the fact that the tachten isn't opposed to your working with them, that you're being mevader them, it's not because of the mitzias of the tachten. It's not his will, not his seichel, which means the nisbader doesn't agree to it. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't intellectually. He doesn't want it. The elyon is mevader him by nullifying him, by shining and coming down with this force milmayla, so that he's in his battle. But it's not that the mitzias accepts it. It's not that he agrees. It's not that the mevader, the nisbader, accepts that. Because through the fact that in the misbader, in the tachten, there shines a relation of oir, which has no comparison to him, he becomes bottle from his existence. So that is when the bittul takes place, so he's total in his battle, so there's nothing left of the mitzias of the tacht. But on the other hand, but when the birur is in such a way that the elyon, the one that is mevader, he has to descend. He comes to the place of the tachten, the one who is being misbader. That means that what? That the tachten has some sort of importance. He takes up space. He's coming to you. The Oren is coming to the midbar, which means it recognizes and it comes down to that level. So this is evident, this proves that the lower one takes up room. In other words, it's meaning to him, it's something to him. So that is the level in which the mevarer, nizbarer, has a tfisa smokim. It has some room by the one who's mevarer. And that's why it doesn't, not possible, it doesn't fit that through his revelation, that when the mevarer will be revealed by the mizbarer, he should be totally nullified, because the mevarer itself gives room for the nizbarer. That's why he came down to him. So that means that he is agreeing, he's okay with his entity, he's coming to him. So therefore, even though his light shines, he's not going to be misbattled totally. So now we say Kivon Shegam Birur Zeh Hu B'derech Milmayla Lamato V'loi B'derech Hislapshus. So even though that also that this birur, that he is nizbarer, he goes into the tachten, is also b'derech milmayla lemato v'loy b'derech hislapshus. Kanal sivches. The Rebbe spoke, but it's not like he brought down from the other Maimorim that even in the Orin, in the Midbar, even though it went down to the misbarer, but he didn't change around the misbarer itself. It was coming down there, and through the gilui, the misbarer changed around. That's why we call that also b'derech menucha a little bit. Even though by the orin, it's also comes. It's the way it comes down to the tachten, but it hasn't dressed up in the tachten. It comes milmayla lamato. Va'bitul shal yidei gilu erzeh einay bitul betachlis. So the bitul that comes through that revelation doesn't totally mevatel the mato, the tachten. Lochein, and therefore, gam le'achrei habirur, even after the tachten is being nisbarer, nishar adayin behelem etzius de menaged. Therefore, after the birur, there still remains in a hidden way, there is still an entity of the menaged, the vecho misanecho. It remains misanecho. So he says, because both the mevarer comes down to the nisbarer, and the way he impacts the nisbarer is not by changing around the nisbarer. It also comes b'derech milmayla lemato, that because of the light of the mevarer is nisbarer, so the tachten remains there. So therefore, so what does the mevarer accomplish in the misbarer? But it's still the light of the mevarer, when it comes down to the nisbarer, is being a gilu oil from the mevarer. Kivon shahat tachtet einay be'erech gam legilui zeh legabe gilu zeh sheyesh letvis smokim legabe. Even though the tachten is not, there's no comparison, even though we're talking about such a revelation, which there is tvisas mokim, that oir, the tachten has a tvisas mokim, is coming to him. So it means it's not an super strong oir that is at all not, it's something which is connected to him because it comes down. But still, even though it's a tvisas mokim, but it's still uncomparable, higher than the tachten. So even though that he has a tvisas mokim by the mevarer, but it's still not comparable at all to the Gilui Oir from the Mevarer. L'chein, Gam al yidei Gilui zeh. That's why also through that Gilui, Mizbatel ha'toikev da ha'tachten. He remains a tachten, but the force, the strength of the tachten is Mevatel. By his nagdus shaloi, and his opposition of the tachten, which is Evecho Misanecho, who be'oifen du yefutzu v'yanusu. It's in a way that its scatter runs away, but he remains. As opposed to when the birur is in a way of menucha, like by Shlomo, the Zesha Elyon HaMevarer Hu b'mekoymeh. The fact that the Elyon whose Mevarer stays in his place, he doesn't descend to the place of the Tachtin. It's because the lower level doesn't really take up any space. He doesn't consider him. So when then that light shines, the subjugation, the negation of the Tachtin is a total bittul. The Rebbe explained here like this, that the difference between these two types of bittul, the birurim, the birur that comes through the orin, which is b'derech milchama, and the mevarer comes down to the mizbarer, and the bittul that comes through the level of menucha, like by Shlomo, in which the mevarer stays in its place and being mizbarer, also impacts what's left of what you're mevarer. In the case of the orin, the mesanecho or remained even after the birur. By Shlomo, when it was in a way of menucha, it was bittul betachlis. There was nothing left. Why is that? So that's what the Rebbe explains over here, that when the bittul comes from the mevarer dressing up in the mizbarer, that means that the mizbarer has a tfisas mokim by them. And since, as we learned earlier, the way the mevarer that dresses up in the mizbarer that has a tfisas mokim is also milmailo, that there's a gili oir, and b'meila verta nisbatel. So the matter, the tachten didn't really change. It is no. So what does happen? But since that gilui oir from the mevarer, which dressed up in the mizbarer, is still much higher, even though the mizbarer has a tfisas mokim by the mevarer, but the oir is still much higher than the tachten, than the mizbarer. So he becomes mizbatel, so that he runs away. He's scattered. Yonusu v'yafutzu. So that much he accomplishes. But a change to be mevatel, no. But when the birur comes, that the mevarer doesn't come down to the nizbarer. Why doesn't it come down? Because the nizbarer doesn't exist by him. He's no tfisas mokim. So when there is a powerful light that comes from the mevarer by Shlomo, because he's sitting in his place and he cannot come down to the nizbarer because he's so much higher. And when that gilui comes, then the nizbarer becomes totally nizbatel. And that's the way in which there's no yo'ovecho, there's no misanech anymore. And now the Rebbe wants to add to it, even in the way that we're talking about Shlomo HaMelech, and we're talking about that the mevarer is standing b'mekoymeh. But if the nizbarer has some tfisas mokim by him, it has some room, it's also not going to be a complete bittul. And the Rebbe explains that's why we're saying that by Shlomo HaMelech it was kaima sira ba'ashlemusa, that it was on the highest level, because it's not only that Shlomo was sitting in Yerushalayim and they were being this battle, the Malchus Shavo, from far away. No, it's more than that. It's Shlomo was sitting there and all the other ones meant nothing to him. So there's basically, sometimes the mevarer cannot come down to the nizbarer, but still the nizbarer has a little bit of tfisas mokim, has some room by him. But in this case of Shlomo HaMelech, That's why we learn in the Maimer that it was a level of Ashirus. Let's look inside. We can say this even deeper, the Rebbe says. This idea that even when we're talking about the Gam Kisha Birur Hu Ba'oifun Shamavarer Hu B'Mekoime, even when the Birur is in a way that the Mavarer is in his place, like by Shlomo Melech, Eloshu Bedarga Kazu Sham Mizbarer Yesh Leitfisas Mokum Legabe. But he's in such a way, he's in such a level that the one who's being Mizbarer it takes up space by him, meaning he has a Metzias. So then Habitl B'Hamenagid Ein Bitl B'Tachlis. Then it wouldn't be a Bitl B'Tachlis. Why? Because since he means something to him, if he means something, he cannot be Mevatel him totally, because he still gives him, he himself, the Mevater, gives him a place. And this explains, the Rebbe will use this as an explanation for why the Maimer has to say that by the Shlomo Melech, it was in such a way that it was such an Ashirus that the Mizbarer had really no connection at all, was no Tfisas Mokim. So based on this, we can add the explanation. This that it appears from the Maimer. Over there it says Shlomo was a man of peace, of relaxation. Because during the days of Shlomo, the moon was in its full, which was the fact that the 15th king, as we spoke about, the 15th day, when the moon is a full moon. And over there it says, Ashirus shalamayla mimilu achisorim. It was a shirus which was more than just filling what lacking. We talked about the level of Ashirus, as the Rebbe quoted before, that was in the day of Shlomo. Why is it necessary for the Maimer to tell us, in order to explain the menucha that takes place and the birur that takes place by Derech Sholem, by David, by Shlomo, by bringing down that it was Ashirus and Shlomo's? Why? But now we understand, because even if the birur is b'derech, that the mevarer is not descending to the nizbarer, could also be not a bittul betachlis. It's only a bittul betachlis if when the mevarer, there's no tfisa smokim to the nizbarer. And that is because there is ashirus. Because if there's no ashirus, there's still a little tfisa smokim, so it won't be a bittul betachlis. The Rebbe explains. Ki amitis ha'inyan de menucha v'sholem. Because the real idea of menucha v'sholem, hu kishamanaged mizbatel b'chtachlis, is when the opponent is totally, that's real sholem. If there's still a little bit left of the menaged, it's not really sholem, it's not really complete. Ubichdei sha'menaged yizbatel b'tachlis. How is the menaged totally negated, bottle? While yidei hamshochas inyan ha'ashirus, that is by bringing down the idea of ashirus, to bringing down the wealth into the in the mavarer, when he has and that wealth, bringing it down into the nizbarer. Oirin sof shalamayla meshaychas le'olamas, which we talk about the ashirus, is higher the level of atik, because the medei machsoirei, the hay we learned before that malchus was lacking, that's from the level of arich hitzoinis hakeser. But to give him the pnimius hakeser, then it's totally mizvat. The ba'oid hashayich le'olamos, when we talk an oid that is connected, which is the level of arich hitzoinis hakeser, koil gam oid hasoivev, even when we talk about the level of soivev keser. So it's not ishtalshlus, it's the maila, but it's still a shaychus le'olamas. It surrounds the world. It's keser. Since that light gives room for oilamos, oilam meloshen helam vehester, which means a world which is helam and hester, blocked and obscure. So it allows for that obscurity in the level of keser. Habitul dahamenagdim sheba oilam. So the subjugation, the nullification of the opponents in the world, al dei gilu oir zeh, through this revelation, ein a bittul betachlis. It is not a complete bittul. V'zeh sheshloima hoyish menucha v'sholem hoy b'yomav. And the fact that Shloima was a man of menucha, of relaxation, and there was peace in his days, mipnei sheb'yomav hoyam shochas b'chinas atik ashirus, was because during his days there was atik, there was ashirus. So the Rebbe explained over here, the whole idea that in order to change around the tachten, that it should be misbattle in ganzen and not exist, this needs to be done when it comes milmayla to gilu oir, which is mevatel. And the Rebbe was machadish that even when the gilu comes milmayla, that gilu needs to have infused by atik, which has no connections to the world, so that is mevatel the world. Because if it's only arich, it's only keser, which is surrounds the world, even though it is higher than ishtalshel, but it has a connection. It allows for world. Anything that allows for world cannot inherently be mevatel world when you yourself allow for it. So dafke, it has to come to ashirus. Dafke because it's kaimus sida bashlemusa. Dafke because there's the gilu oir of atik. When that gilu of atik comes down into the world, then it's mevatel the world. And Shlomo was a man of menucha shalom. There was no amitis hasholem is when there's no menagid left, there's no opponents left. If it's opponent left, it's your nusu misanecha, and it's your futsu, that's still an opponent there. There's still an enemy there. So that doesn't accomplish the job. That's why by Shlomo HaMelech, the Maimer says it was a level of kaimas sida bashlemusa. There was a full moon. It was ashiris. It wasn't just lacking. It came down. Malchus was infused not just by arich, not just by the lacking, but ashirus from the level of atik, and that brings about the bittul hoilamis, which when the opponent is totally devastated, no longer there, that is when there's real menucha and shalom. But then we have even a higher level. These are levels which were in the time of Shlomo HaMelech. We got the level of atik. But when Mashiach comes, then we'll get the pnimius atik, which will be the level of chesed, which is higher than ashirus. We talked in the Maimed, Rebbe quoted, that Gemilas chesed is bein la'anim or bein la'ashirim. Even the level of ashirus, even the level of atik, even when malchus has the level of atik in it, that's not the ultimate. The ultimate for malchus would be when it'll have the level of pnimius atik, it'll have the level of chesed, which will have the atzmus, the oirein sof of atik, as the Rebbe will explain now. Mamshir b'hamaimer yud. Mamshir b'hamaimer. Continues the minor. The inyan chesed shehu lemailo gam ashirus. That the idea of chesed, we talked about before, tzedakah v'chesed. Tzedakah is what it's lacking. That was it. And then you have the idea of chesed, but chesed is even higher than ashirus that we said, which is atik. Why? Because chesed you give even to gamla chasodim, to ashirim. Sholochein. Gimilus chasodim higam la'ashirim. That's why chasodim, when you give kindness, it's also osher. And osher also gets the level of chasodim. Hu hagilui del osid lavei. That's the revelation that Malchus would get and come down to the olam in the future to come. Shonai leyoser gam hagilui shahoya b'mei shloime. That is even higher than the revelation that was in the days of Shlomo. The hamshocha shebimei Shlomo, The Hamshocha that came down of Shlomo into Malchus, into the world, that was from the level of Atik, like we said before. That's going to come from the inner of Atik, which means Hainu Ein Sof Sheberadlo. That will be the Ein Sof that is in Radlo. Radlo stands for Reisha Deloy Isyado, a head which is not known. Generally speaking, in Atik, we also have the hidden spheres, like 10, like we have everywhere. So we have 7 parts of Atik, which are Nimshach. And then we have 3 parts of Atik, which are not Nimshach. They're called the Reisha. They're the head, the top. One of them is called Reisha Deloy Isyado, a head that was not known. As we'll see, there's 3 Reisha. So he says that over there, the Ein Sof of Radlo, which means the Reisha Deloy Isyado is Atik. That's Atik itself. The Ein Sof is the Atzmos of Atik. Hainu Ein Sof Sheberadlo. The Ein Sof, which is in the Reisha Deloy Isyado, Shehu Iker Ha'inyan the Atik. That's the main idea of Atik, is the Ein Sof, which is in the Radlo. Not the Radlo, not the Reisha, but the Ein Sof. And the Rebbe says to point out, Lahoir, Mimashekosov beZoyar, the Zoyar, and this is in the Idra Zuta, a section of the Zoyar called the small Idra, the circles they used to learn, Idra Rabba, Idra Zutra. So those are sections in the Zoyar in which were taught by the smaller circle, the Idra Zuta. So over there it says in the Zoyar, Hai Atiko Ishtakach Betlas Reishin. Atik finds itself in 3 heads. Remember I said before, the Chochma Bina Das, in Pnimius Atik, those are the 3 heads. The Zayin, the Chagas Nehim, Chesed Gunes Chesed Malchus, those are the 7, which are Nimshach. But within the level of Atik, where is Atik? Over there you find it in the 3 heads. Upirish Harav Chaim Vital, Bibiro Idra Zutra. So Rav Chaim Vital explaining this Idra Zutra that it says Bitlas Reishin, She Iker Atiko Hu Ha'ein Soif. The main Atiko is Ein Sof. It's not the 3 levels. It's not the Reisha, not the Gimel Reishin. It's the Ein Sof. V'al Shem his al Musei begimul Reishim, because he becomes obscured in these 3 Reishim, these 3 heads, which basically would be Chochmah Bina Das, Nikroim Gama Gimul Reishim b'Shem Atik. That's why we also call them Atik. We call the Gimel Reishim Atik because the Ein Sof hides himself in there. But really, that's not Atik. Atik is what? Is the Ein Sof. Ba'al Pizeh. So based on this, Iker Atika Hu Ein Sof, Hu Ein Sof. The main Atik is the Ein Sof. Ba'al Shem his Almuseh B'Gimel Reishim. But because he hides himself in the 3 Reishim, Nikroim Gama Gimel Reishim, so also the 3 Reishim are also called Shem Atik. So the only reason we call them Atik is because the Ein Sof hides himself over there. But what is Atik? Atik is the Ein Sof. The main Atika is the Ein Sof, which is in all 3 Reishim. That's generally speaking. Aber b'maimer zeh, in this mevayer, she'ikar ha'inyan da'atik hu ein sof sheberadlo. That the main Ein Sof is in Radlo. Why does he choose the Maimer to say that it's the Ein Sof in the Reisha de la Isyado versus the other two Reishin? In the Reisha de la Isyado, one of them, not the other three. So the Rebbe explains there that the main Ein Sof is the one that hides in Radlo. That's the essence. The Rebbe explains this. V'yeshlavayir zeh, Api ma shekosu ba'amaimer behemshech ha'inyan. Based on what it's written in the Maimer, and it continues, be'inyan ma shekosu Reb Chaim Vital bebir Idre Zutra. This we brought down, that Reb Chaim Vital, when he's explaining the Idre Zutra, so the Idre Zutra that we quoted before, uses three languages. It says that the Ein Sof, he says, Nimtzo, finds itself. Ein Sof finds itself. Umis'alem, and hides itself, obscures itself. Umisgale, and reveals itself. Begimul Reishin, in the three heads. So there is three Reishin, but he uses three languages. Finds himself, obscures himself, and reveals himself in the Gimel Reishin. So Reb Chaim Vital explains what is these three Lashonos, that each one of these three Lashonos represents a different Reisha, which is in Atik, in which it comes down. And the most important, the first one, is Reisha de lo Yisyado. Over there, it's Nimtza. Nimtza means it finds himself over there. The Rebbe explains now. Shegimul ha-Lashonos. So Reb Chaim Vital explains that the three languages of Nimtza, Umis'alem, Umisgale, it says he finds himself, and it's obscure revealed. Hem kimoy gimul hinyonim, it says it's like we say, Ato, when we talk about Hashem. Ato means you, which is present, we see, say Ato. Who means he is obscure. V'havaya. So he says like this. Nimtzo, when he uses the language of Nimtzo, hukumay Ato, that's equivalent to saying Ato you, which is Atzmus. You, that's the Atzmus, the presence. Mis'alem hu misgale, with the second two levels, obscure and revealed, hu v'havaya is like he and Havaya, those are the two madregas. So hu and Havaya are beis madregas be'oir. They are two levels in oir. The nimtzo, you find yourself, that's a madrega in etzem, that's a madrega in atzmus. Hu, the level of hu v'havaya, which is the level of two levels in oir. So basically, in the Reisha de la Isyada, you have the Nimtza. You have the essence over there, which is higher than in the other two Reishim, in which it's Mis'alem. Upirish Nimtzahu. What does it mean he finds himself over there? Shu Nimtza Kamoy Shehu Ba'atzmusa. He is found over there as is in his Zetz. So Ba'al Pizeh. So based on this, Yesh Levayir. So we can explain. The Maimer says that the main thing of Atik, who Ein Sof Sheberad Lo, why does the Maimer choose to say the Ein Sof in the Reisha de lo Isyado? Why not the other two Reishin? The answer now we know, because over there it's Nimtza, because that's really which is the highest level. Because over there in Radlo is Nimtza. And that's why that's the real Ein Sof. And rather to add further to this, also the Alpi Habiyur Bahamaimer, that based on what the Maimer explained, the Inyan Nimtza, that what is the meaning when it's nimtzo is found? She'ein sof nimtzo beradlo. What does it mean? Ein sof is found over there. Hu shu nimtzo beradlo k'moy shu b'atzmusay. That it's in radlo as it is in atzmus. The same comes down in radlo. Yesh levayir zeh shebimei shloima hoyso ashirus amitis. So we can explain why in the days of Shloima was true wealth. Even though it wasn't yet the revelation of the future, and still the Ashirus was in a true Ashirus. Because the novelty of La'asid Lava is not going to be in the level that it's going to be Nizgala like in Radlo in a way of Giluyim. Then it's going to be the Etzem which is higher than Giluyim. And the level of Giluyim was in by Shloima B'Shleimus. The real, so by Shloima we had the level of the Nimtzo, the way Ein Sof is Nimtzo in Radlo, and that's in the level of Giluyim, but in the Osid Lava will have the Etzem, the Ein Sof itself. The Rebbe explained over here that Osid Lava, it's higher than Shloimo, is because we're going to get the Ein Sof of Radlo, which means, and the Rebbe explained why Dafke says Radlo versus the other two from the three, the quoted from the Zohar, from Reb Chaim Vital, that the main place where Ein Sof dresses up is Take in Radlo. And Mimei Shloima, that's what the Rebbe explained, there was a real Ashirus because it had the Ein Sof of Radlo, but still, that wasn't the ultimate. The ultimate is only going to come from the time, Yeah. I'm in the middle of a class now. All right, where are we up to? What time is it now? It's almost time. Let me see what long goes to. Okay, let's leave it over here today because we're almost out of time over here. I don't know. So, okay.
Another time.
See you next time. Okay.